Emily Carter had always believed in helping others. That's why she became a nurse in the first place. At just 28 years old, she had already spent 6 years working at St. Vincent's Hospital, known for being one of the busiest medical centers in the city. Every day, Emily faced long hours, tired feet, and stressful situations, but she never complained. She loved her job because she loved people. One cool October evening, Emily finished her shift later than usual. She had worked overtime to help cover for a coworker who had called in sick. As she walked through the hospital's sliding doors, she finally felt the fresh air on her face. She took a deep breath, looked at the darkening sky, and walked toward her small blue car in the parking lot. Her mind was already thinking about dinner and a warm shower. Traffic was light as she drove through the city streets. Her favorite music played softly on the radio. Emily was just a few blocks from her apartment when she saw something strange. Up ahead, a small group of people had gathered near the sidewalk in front of a local coffee shop. Several people were looking down at someone on the ground. A woman was waving her arms, clearly panicked. Emily slowed her car and pulled over without thinking twice. Her heart began to beat faster. As a nurse, she had seen many emergencies, but it never felt normal. She grabbed her small first aid kit, which she always kept in the car, and rushed toward the scene. When she got closer, she saw a man lying on the ground. He wasn't moving. His eyes were closed, and he didn't seem to be breathing. A young man nearby was calling 911, but no one else knew what to do. The crowd looked helpless. Emily quickly dropped to her knees next to the man. "I'm a nurse," she said loudly, so everyone could hear. "I'm going to help him." A woman stepped back, giving her room. She checked for a pulse, nothing. She listened for breathing, still nothing. Time was slipping away. Without hesitation, Emily began chest compressions. Her hands moved steadily, counting in her head. 1, 2, 3, 4, she whispered. She had done this hundreds of times in the hospital, but doing it outside in the middle of the street made everything feel more intense. A minute passed, then 2. A man in a business suit offered to help hold the man's head steady. Emily nodded gratefully and kept going. Sweat formed on her forehead, but she didn't stop. She didn't even think about stopping. The only thought in her mind was keep him alive. Finally, after what felt like forever, the man let out a weak breath. His chest moved slightly. Emily checked again and found a faint pulse. She kept talking to him softly. "You're going to be okay. Help is coming." Soon, sirens could be heard in the distance. An ambulance pulled up to the curb and 2 paramedics jumped out. They took over from Emily and she quickly explained what had happened. One of the paramedics nodded. "You may have saved his life," he said kindly. Emily stood up slowly, her legs a little shaky. The man was placed on a stretcher and carefully loaded into the ambulance. As the doors closed, the crowd around her clapped lightly. A woman thanked Emily with tears in her eyes. Another person asked for her name, but Emily just smiled and said, "I did what anyone would do." Then she walked back to her car, feeling a strange mix of calm and adrenaline. She sat behind the wheel for a moment, breathing deeply. Saving a life was never easy, but it always felt right. That night, Emily didn't sleep much. The image of the man's face stayed in her mind. She hoped he would be okay. She hoped his family would see him again. Most of all, she felt thankful that she had been in the right place at the right time. The next morning, Emily arrived at the hospital early for her shift. She didn't mention the incident to anyone. She wasn't looking for praise or attention. She had done what she believed was her duty as a nurse and as a human being. But what Emily didn't know was that someone had recorded part of the event on their phone and shared it online. The video showed her calmly and professionally helping the man, surrounded by worried bystanders. The post read, "This nurse saved a man's life last night. She didn't even hesitate." By lunchtime, her co-workers were already talking about it. Some congratulated her. Others said they were proud to work with someone like her. Emily felt a little embarrassed, but also deeply touched. She still didn't know who the man was or what had caused him to collapse, but She felt at peace knowing she had done her best. What Emily didn't expect, however, was that something else had been set in motion. Something much bigger than her, small act of kindness. Something that would soon turn her life upside down. Emily returned to work the next day hoping things would feel normal again. Her shift began just like any other, checking patient charts, helping with medications, and answering questions from worried families. She smiled, she listened, and she cared for everyone like she always did. But inside, something felt different. The memory of saving the stranger stayed fresh in her mind. She didn't know his name yet, or what happened after he was taken away in the ambulance, but she had a strong hope he was recovering. She kept telling herself, "You did the right thing. That's what matters." By midday, Emily was called into the nursing supervisor's office. She thought maybe it had something to do with the video that had spread online, showing her helping the man. She assumed someone wanted to thank her or talk about it. But when she stepped inside the office, the mood felt cold. Her supervisor, Mrs. Turner, sat at her desk with a straight face and a thick file in front of her. "Emily," Mrs. Turner said, "please sit down." Emily sat, feeling a little unsure. "We've reviewed the incident from 2 nights ago," the supervisor began. "The one where you assisted a person outside the hospital." Emily nodded politely. "Yes. He had collapsed and I—" Mrs. Turner raised her hand gently, stopping her mid-sentence. "I understand your intentions were good, but unfortunately you used hospital equipment, your emergency kit, which belongs to this facility. You were off duty, and we have strict rules about what staff members can and can't do outside work hours." Emily blinked, confused. "But I carry a personal first aid kit. It's not taken from here." Mrs. Turner sighed. "Even so, the situation places the hospital at risk. If something had gone wrong, there could have been legal trouble. You also acted without proper clearance or backup." Emily was quiet for a moment. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. "So, am I being written up?" The supervisor glanced at the file again. "After discussions with HR, the hospital has decided to end your employment, effective immediately." Emily froze. "I'm being fired?" "It's not personal," Mrs. Turner said quickly. "It's a policy issue. You're a talented nurse, Emily, but rules must be followed." Emily sat still, stunned. The room felt quiet and heavy. After everything she had done, after all the lives she had cared for over the years, this was how it would end? She stood up slowly. Her voice shook a little, but she stayed calm. "I saved someone's life. That's what I did." Mrs. Turner didn't meet her eyes. "Please, turn in your badge and uniform before you leave." Emily walked out of the office, her head spinning. Some coworkers noticed her empty hands and her pale face, but she didn't say a word. She returned to the staff locker room, quietly changed clothes, and left her badge on the counter. It all felt surreal. As she stepped outside the hospital, for what might be the last time, the sun was shining, but she felt cold. She had never been in trouble before, not at school, not at work. Her entire life had been built on kindness, responsibility, and care. And now she was jobless, not for making a mistake, but for doing something right. She drove home in silence, her phone buzzing with messages she didn't answer. Friends, co-workers, and even people she barely knew had seen the video of her helping the man. Many were praising her. But now she felt lost. Later that evening, she sat on her couch, trying to make sense of everything. A knock at the door surprised her. When she opened it, she found her neighbor, a cheerful woman named Lisa, holding her phone. "Emily," Lisa said, "did you see this? You're all over the internet." Emily smiled weakly. "Yeah, I saw it. But wait, you didn't tell anyone you got fired, did you?" Emily looked down. "No, not yet." Lisa stepped inside and showed her phone. A video of Emily helping the man had been shared thousands of times. People were commenting things like, "She's a hero," and "That nurse should be honored, not punished." Someone had also posted an update. The man Emily helped had survived and was recovering in the hospital. His name was Carl Jennings, and he wanted to meet the person who saved his life. Lisa sat next to her and said, "You should tell your story. People will stand with you." Emily didn't know what to think. She wasn't someone who looked for attention. She had always believed that helping others was just what people should do, not something to be praised for. But something about the way she had been treated felt deeply wrong, and maybe if she spoke up, she could make sure no other nurse was punished for doing the right thing. That night, Emily wrote a simple post online. She shared her side of the story. She explained what happened, how she saw the man collapse, how she reacted quickly to save him, and how she was later fired for acting without permission. She didn't complain. She didn't attack anyone. She simply told the truth. Within hours, her story began to spread. More nurses started sharing their own experiences, times they helped people outside of work or when strict rules got in the way of doing good. Doctors, paramedics, and even teachers added their voices in support. Emily's inbox filled with messages from strangers. Some thanked her. Others offered job leads. A few said she had reminded them that compassion still mattered. She went to bed that night not knowing what the future held, but for the first time since losing her job, she didn't feel alone. Something bigger was happening now, something she had never planned for, and the hospital that let her go was about to feel the impact of that choice. The next morning, Emily woke up to the sound of her phone buzzing again and again. She rubbed her eyes and looked at the screen. There were hundreds of new notifications. Her online post had gone viral overnight. Her story had been shared across social media, news websites, and even on television. People from all over the country were reacting to what had happened. Many messages came from nurses and healthcare workers who said they had faced similar problems. Some had helped people in emergencies and were later questioned or punished for it. Others simply wrote, "Thank you for speaking up," or, "You reminded me why I became a nurse." Emily felt overwhelmed, but in a good way. For the first time, since she was fired, she didn't feel small or powerless. She felt like her voice was being heard. She opened a message from a woman named Susan who introduced herself as Carl Jennings's sister, the man Emily had saved. Susan wrote that Carl was doing much better now, and that he wanted to meet her in person as soon as possible. Reading those words made Emily's eyes fill with tears. She had often wondered how Carl was doing, just knowing that he had survived, and now wanted to meet her, brought a deep sense of comfort to her heart. Later that afternoon, a reporter from a local news channel called her and asked if she'd be willing to do a short interview. At first, Emily hesitated. She wasn't used to being in the spotlight, but then she thought about the other nurses who had reached out to her. Maybe if she shared her story in her own words, more people would understand how important it was to support healthcare workers, not punish them for being human. She agreed to the interview. The reporter came to Emily's apartment with a small camera and a kind smile. They sat in her living room where the sun was gently shining through the curtains. The reporter asked, "Emily, when you saw that man on the sidewalk, what made you stop and help?" Emily smiled softly. "I didn't think. I just knew someone needed help. That's what we're trained to do. It didn't matter if I was on duty or not. He needed someone, and I was there." The reporter nodded. "And how did you feel when you found out you were being let go?" Emily paused for a moment. "Honestly, it hurt. I've always loved my job. I never expected to be punished for doing something that felt right." The interview aired that evening, and once again, the response was huge. More news stations began reaching out. Medical experts on talk shows started discussing the importance of empowering nurses instead of limiting them. Some even questioned whether hospitals had become too focused on rules and not enough on people. Then something even more surprising happened. A petition was started online, asking for Emily to be reinstated at St. Vincent's Hospital. In less than 48 hours, the petition had over 500,000 signatures. People from every background, parents, students, workers, and even retired nurses, signed and shared it, saying they stood with Emily. A group of nursing students at a nearby university held a peaceful gathering in support of her. They made signs that said things like, "Compassion is not a mistake," and "Let heroes be heroes." Photos from the event were shared online, gaining even more attention. Meanwhile, Carl Jennings, now awake and recovering, recorded a short video from his hospital bed. In the video, he thanked Emily by name. "If it weren't for Nurse Emily Carter," he said, "I wouldn't be here today. I don't remember much from that day, but I'm told she saved my life. I think she deserves our respect, not punishment." The video went viral, and more news stations picked it up. Emily watched it with a hand over her heart. Seeing Carl alive and speaking made all her pain feel worthwhile. Back at St. Vincent's Hospital, the story was causing a lot of pressure. Staff members whispered in hallways. Some were angry about how Emily had been treated. Others were afraid of speaking out but quietly supported her. Inside the hospital's boardroom, the top executives met behind closed doors. The hospital's public image had taken a hit. Donations were dropping. People had begun posting negative reviews. Some patients even said they no longer felt safe knowing that the hospital punished those who cared too much. The hospital's leadership didn't expect the story to become this big. What they thought was a small internal decision had now become a national conversation. Their phones kept ringing with calls from reporters. Their email inboxes were filled with messages demanding answers. The pressure continued to grow. A few days later, the hospital released a short statement online, saying they were re-evaluating the situation and deeply respected all staff members who dedicated themselves to saving lives. But the public didn't feel it was enough. People wanted more than words, they wanted action. That evening, Emily received a call from someone she didn't expect. It was the hospital's director. He sounded polite but nervous. "Emily, we'd like to invite you back for a meeting. We believe we may have acted too quickly and we want to discuss the next steps with you." Emily listened calmly. A part of her had waited for this moment, but another part of her wasn't sure if she wanted to return to a place that didn't stand by her when it mattered most. Still, she agreed to meet. As she hung up the phone, Emily looked out her window at the quiet street below. Just 1 week ago, she had been another tired nurse walking home from a long shift. Now she was the center of something much bigger, a movement, a message, and a moment that was opening hearts across the country. And though she didn't yet know what the meeting would bring, she did know one thing for sure. She had stood up for what was right, and people had stood with her. Emily sat quietly in the waiting area outside the hospital director's office. It had been a few days since he called, asking her to come in for a meeting. Now she was here, but her heart was beating faster than usual. She looked around the familiar hallway, clean walls, soft lighting, and the sound of nurses walking past. It all looked the same, yet it felt so different now. Just a week ago, this place had been her second home. She had spent years here, giving everything to her patients. Now she was sitting as a visitor, unsure of what was going to happen. A woman opened the office door and smiled. "They're ready for you now, Emily." Emily stood up, smoothed her clothes, and walked inside. The hospital director sat at the head of a long table, with several people from the leadership team seated beside him. Some of them she recognized, others she had only seen in meetings. "Good morning, Emily," the director said kindly. "Thank you for coming." She nodded, politely. "Thank you for inviting me." The director folded his hands. "We want to begin by saying that we've been watching the public's response over the last few days. It's been impossible to ignore. Your story has touched many people." Emily stayed quiet, listening carefully. He continued, "We've reviewed the decision made regarding your employment, and after thoughtful discussion, we believe it was the wrong call. You acted with courage, professionalism, and compassion, qualities we value in every nurse here." A woman beside him added, "We've also heard from patients and staff members who feel strongly that you deserve to be recognized, not punished." Then the director leaned forward and looked directly at her. "We want to offer you your position back, Emily, with full pay for the days missed, and we'd like to work with you to create clearer policies that support nurses who act in emergencies, even outside the hospital." Emily blinked. For a moment, she didn't know what to say. Her emotions were mixed: relief, surprise, and even a little sadness. "I appreciate the offer," she said carefully, "and I'm grateful for your honesty. But I need time to think." I love being a nurse, but I also want to work where I feel supported, especially when doing what's right. The director nodded. Of course, take all the time you need, and thank you again for your strength and grace through all of this. As Emily left the meeting, a gentle breeze brushed her face. Outside the hospital, a few reporters were still waiting. They asked her how the meeting went, but she just smiled and said, "I'm thinking things over. I'll share more when I'm ready." That evening, Emily visited Carl Jennings at his recovery center. They had arranged to meet privately, away from cameras and attention. Carl was sitting in a chair near a window, a warm blanket on his lap, and a grateful smile on his face. When Emily entered, he stood up slowly, using a cane for balance. "You must be the angel everyone's been talking about." Emily chuckled softly. "I'm no angel, just a nurse who happened to be nearby." Carl reached out and held her hand. "Well, I don't know where I'd be if you hadn't been there. I don't remember much, but I do remember waking up and hearing your voice. It gave me peace." They sat down and talked for a while. Carl told her about his family, his job at a library, and how his life had changed since that day. Emily shared how unexpected everything had become after helping him. Before she left, Carl said something that stayed with her. "You didn't just save me. You reminded people what kindness looks like. That matters more than any rule." Emily drove home in silence, thinking deeply. She thought about the meeting, the support from strangers, and Carl's words. Her heart felt full, but also unsure. She wanted to return to nursing, but she also wanted her work to mean something more than checking boxes and following rules. The next morning, she sat down at her desk and began writing. She wrote not just about what happened, but about what she had learned. She shared ideas on how hospitals could support their staff better, how emergency policies could be improved, and how real-life moments didn't always fit inside official guidelines. She titled the letter, "When Doing the Right Thing Becomes the Hardest Thing." She sent the letter to nursing organizations, hospital leaders, and even lawmakers who had reached out. She didn't write it out of anger, but from a desire to make things better, not just for herself, but for every nurse who might face something similar in the future. A few days later, a local college invited her to speak to nursing students. She stood in front of a small group of young faces, all eager to learn, and told her story, not for praise, but to teach them something she wished she had known earlier. "You will face moments where you'll need to choose between rules and what feels right," she told them. "Always listen to your heart, but be ready to explain your choice with strength and honesty. And remember, you are more than your badge. You are someone's hope." The students clapped, and a few even came up to hug her afterward. Emily felt proud, not for what had happened to her, but for what she was helping to build now. A better, kinder path for those who would come after her. She still hadn't made a final decision about returning to St. Vincent's Hospital. But something had changed inside her. She wasn't just a nurse anymore, she was a voice, a gentle but powerful voice reminding the world that compassion didn't need permission. Weeks had passed since Emily's story first spread across the internet. The messages from strangers still came daily, some from nurses, some from patients, and some from people who had simply been touched by her courage. Her life had changed completely. She had once been a quiet nurse working long hours in the background. Now people were calling her a voice for kindness and compassion. Emily still hadn't returned to work at St. Vincent's Hospital. After their meeting, she had thanked them for the offer but said she needed time. Deep in her heart, she wasn't sure if going back was the right path. She didn't hold anger. She didn't want revenge. She simply wanted to follow a road that felt honest. One morning, as she sipped her coffee near the window, she received an unexpected email. It was from a well-known national nursing conference inviting her to speak as a special guest. They had heard about her story and believed her voice could help guide the future of healthcare. Emily felt surprised and nervous. She had never spoken in front of so many people before. But after a moment of thought, she smiled softly. "Maybe this is my next step," she whispered to herself. A few weeks later, she stood on the stage of a large hall filled with hundreds of people. Nurses, doctors, students, and healthcare leaders all listened as she stepped up to the microphone. The lights were bright and the room was quiet. She began with simple words. "My name is Emily Carter. I'm a nurse, and I believe that helping people should never be something we fear." She shared her story, how she had been walking home that night, how she saw a man collapse and how her first instinct was to help. She explained how she was later fired and how it felt like her heart had been broken. But then she shared what had come next, the support from strangers, the messages, the kindness, the hope. "I never expected any of this," she said, "but maybe that's the beauty of doing the right thing. It reaches farther than you imagine." She ended her speech with a soft but strong message. Let us build a world where doing the right thing is never questioned, where nurses, doctors, and all caregivers are encouraged to act with heart, not just follow rules. Let us not punish kindness, let us protect it. The audience stood up and clapped, many with tears in their eyes. Emily stepped back, feeling both nervous and proud. She had found a way to turn a painful moment into something meaningful. After the event, people came up to thank her. One woman, a nurse with over 20 years of experience, held Emily's hands and said, "You spoke for all of us. Thank you." That night, Emily sat quietly in her hotel room, looking out over the city. Lights. She realized that though she had lost one job, she had gained something even bigger, a mission. She didn't just want to care for patients anymore. She wanted to care for the people who cared for patients. A few months later, Emily started a small nonprofit group with help from some friends and former co-workers. The group's goal was simple: to support healthcare workers who acted with compassion but were punished or misunderstood. They gave emotional support, advice, and even legal help when needed. She called the organization Hearts in Action. The group grew quickly. Nurses from different parts of the country reached out, sharing their stories and offering to help others. Emily was amazed at how many people had faced similar situations. Some had been afraid to speak up before. Now, with Hearts in Action, they had a safe place to be heard. Carl Jennings, the man Emily had saved, joined as a volunteer. He said he wanted to give back because he was still here, thanks to one person's brave choice. He helped write letters, answered phone calls, and even gave small talks to community groups. One day, Emily received another invitation, this time from a group of lawmakers working on improving healthcare policy. They had read about her story and the work she was doing through her nonprofit. They asked her to join a panel of advisors, helping to shape better protections for healthcare workers. Emily was stunned. She never imagined her quiet decision on that sidewalk would one day lead to changes in the law. She agreed to help, and soon she was attending meetings, reading documents, and sharing ideas that could protect the next nurse in a similar situation. Back home, the local community celebrated her efforts. A nearby park even placed a bench in her honor with a small sign that read, "For Nurse Emily Carter," who reminded us that one kind act can change everything. Emily often walked past that bench when she needed to think. She would sit there, close her eyes, and smile. She didn't miss her old job anymore. She had found a new way to care, one that reached farther than any hospital walls. One sunny afternoon, she received a card in the mail. It was from a young nursing student named Ava. The card read, "Dear Nurse Emily, your story inspired me to never be afraid of doing the right thing. I just graduated and I'm starting my first job next week. I hope I can be as brave and kind as you." Emily read the card twice, her eyes warm with emotion. She placed it on her bookshelf, beside photos of her nursing school days and a framed picture of her and Carl at the charity event. She knew life had taken a turn she never expected, but now, looking back, she wouldn't change a thing. Because, in a world full of rules and fear, she had chosen kindness. And that choice had sparked something beautiful, not just for her, but for countless others. And so, Emily's story didn't end with her being fired. It began there, and what grew from it was stronger than any job title. It was the power of doing what's right, even when it's hard.